Welcome into Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These is dog takes. Can I talk that dog? What's up? You really like that? Let's shut up and grind some tape.
Google what I told you mid-show.
Okay.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome in on a beautiful Thursday evening here on the Film Guy Network. We have sayings around here, all right? When we get to the final one, we do a lot of content around here. When we get to Thursday, hey, last ones, best ones. It is portal season. But there is portal season, and then there's tampering season nowadays in college football. We are currently in portal season. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think portal season is really just about making statements and getting commitment edits finalized, and it's just about announcement times, really. It's all about formalities right about now. It's about telling the world what you already been doing. And what you've been doing, all right, is tampering season. And tampering season, I'd say, started about a month ago. Maybe 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, depending on how advanced scouting, how advanced you are in your scouting, I should say, with regards to the transfer portal. Tampering season was the last couple of months in college football. And you know what this is, right? This is, hey, are you happy, right? Hey, Dad, is your son happy at the school he's at? And no, we showed you a lot of love coming out of high school. Y'all know how these tampering things work. Y'all also know that tampering is just as big and a legal part of college football right now. And it's not technically legal, but it's not being, enforced. There's nothing actually being enforced about it, so it might as well be legal. It's just as big of a portion of this whole deal right now in college football as the portal itself or as NIL itself, right? The ability to go out and get in bed with these individuals prior to actually hitting the portal is something that is happening left and right. We talked about it last night, okay? Kirby Smart was asked about it 3 weeks ago. Hey, what's going to happen when the portal comes? And he said, hey, man, when these guys come to us and say they want to enter the portal, most of them, 9 times out of 10, already know exactly where they are going. So what is he telling you? He's telling you that he knows this tampering exists, and you know this tampering exists, right? I think we all know now, looking back at it, there was something funny going on with A.D. Mitchell. Right? It seemed like something funny was going on with A.D. Mitchell. Rumored to enter the portal. As soon as he enters the portal, boom, Texas, right? We saw this with your backup quarterback in the last 72 hours, 48 hours, right? As soon as he enters the portal, might be Kentucky. A day later, is Kentucky, right? These things are already finalized before they happen. And guess what? Why are we talking about this tonight? Because it goes both ways. It goes very much so both ways. As soon as London Humphreys hit the portal from Vanderbilt, 6'3", 200-pound wide receiver, former 3-star recruit, had 450 yards this year, including a 60-yard explosive against you guys. Guess what? As soon as he hits the portal, might have some interest in Georgia. Hey, interest might be mutual. Okay, so you had that one. And then today, you get Trevor Etienne hitting the portal officially. And this is something that was already, I don't go digging for this stuff, but you ain't had to dig very far that there might be some interest prior to this announcement today. Florida folks knew about it. I got to tell you, that's the first one that texted me, actually, was a source from Florida saying, hey, this is probably going to happen. And if it does, or when it does, rather, your school that you cover probably going to be one that's heavily involved in this one. Not officially reporting the mutual interest. I'm just telling you there's probably going to be some between Etienne and the University of Georgia. And I know for a fact, okay, I can tell you, I shouldn't say fact, sourced information here. This dude wants to go play for an immediate winner. He does not want to have to wait around for any type of maybe this team's going to be good. Wants to play for an immediate winner, and he wants a featured role as soon as he gets there. So that being said, with Trevor Etienne in the portal today, gentlemen, first of all, welcome in. What do you think ultimately a potential matchup or a potential landing spot at the University of Georgia looks like? Because I'm just envisioning the fact that Georgia needs to be active in this one. They need to be heavily involved in pursuing this one. Branson Robinson going to be coming off of a foot injury next year, right? A full year on the shelf. Knee.
That was,
knee.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. A lot going on in this head of mine. I know it's rather large, but they don't all the thoughts don't stick there forever. Branson Robinson obviously coming off a year-long injury, albeit a knee injury. Okay, Andrew Paul, very similar case, fresh off of one this past year, his first full year healthy. Roger Robinson and Cash Jones, right? That plethora of backs and the freshmen coming in. you're a couple injuries away from looking at your roster and going, damn, we might be looking at some true freshmen playing for us. Again, that is not having addressed what might happen with Kendall Milton or what might happen with Dejon Edwards. But let's just talk hypotheticals. If that is the roster, gentlemen, if the roster next September is just Branson Robinson, Andrew Paul, Roger Robinson, Cash Jones, and a plethora of freshmen, it's not enough. They have to be active in this one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. You want to have a guy like Etienne in that room because, like you just mentioned, the injuries, you want to make sure that you can buy Branson some time if you have to. You don't want to have to rush him in from Jump Street at the beginning of the season next year, especially with the slate that you have next year.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't have enough bodies in a running back room. You can always have more. Georgia learned that this year. They kind of flirted with that line, towed the line a little bit.
Flirted. They converted a wide receiver. They didn't flirt. They passed over the line this year of not having enough depth at the running back position.
Very fair point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So definitely don't want to be in that position again this year.
Yeah, I mean, it also a guy like Etienne. Yeah, what was that? It fell.
I have no idea what just fell off my desk. Keep going.
But no, a guy like Etienne has a lot of experience too. He's been a starter in an SEC program for 2 years, so having him come on your roster would be huge, especially when you look at that. Branson Robinson hasn't been RB1. Andrew Paul won't have been RB1. All these guys, Cash Jones got a little bit of run at it at the start of the season, but other than that, you don't have a lot of guys getting experience as that primary feature back. So it would be very helpful to have a guy like Etienne on the roster.
And granted, he only had one start this year, so technically he was the two behind Montrell Johnson.
I think that's
his name. Again, a lot going on up here. We're getting better about the names. Normally, I am just terrible with them. I'm a numbers guy. Even so much so now that on some of my radio hits, like Chuck from here in Atlanta on 680, he'll say, what do you think about the so-and-so? See, I forgot his name already. So-and-so from Alabama. For you, that's number 41 on tape. I'm like, 41. Got him. I know exactly who you're talking about. Terrible with names. But definitely you need a back. And it's not the only position you need to be somewhat active in the portal. And we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Welcome into tonight's show. We got a loaded one for you. We're going to be talking about some of those other positions that you might need to address via the NCAA transfer portal. We will continue to talk about this potential fit, an alliance, if you will, of mutual interest between Trevor Etienne and the University of Georgia. As you can see in the title, is this Nick Saban swan song? Are we looking at an end of an era? Something popped up on social media in the last couple of days. We felt we'd at least let you listen to it. We thought it might raise some questions with regards to that topic. We're going to give them three tonight as well. Three things that you learned about the University of Georgia from this season. And then, of course, Georgia had several transfer portal entries today, and we'll talk about that to start the show tonight. But I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks, okay? If you listen to our show and you are a supporter of our show, make sure you're supporting those who support us. They're the ones that allow all of this massive content creation to be deemed worthy, right, of our time and your time as well. So make sure you're heading over to prizepicks.com, using promo code Brooks, and signing up. Look, even if you have already, used some Prize Picks, right, even if you already have an account, run over there anyways. Just continue to use that app in alliance with us as partners with those guys. Promo code Brooks, 100% deposit match over there, and make sure you head over to the Athletic Collection as well. All these posters in the studio that you find here tonight will be made available over there on the Athletic Collection. The link to that is in the description of this video, and that is an NIL play, so a portion of those revenues to each of those posters will go directly to those athletes. Welcome in. We got a loaded one. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like and subscribing, rate and reviewing. We are on the road to 20,000 subscribers, and I think we're going to hit it relatively quickly. So glad to have you guys in tonight. We got a great one. Obviously, three new names hit the transfer portal today. Makai Muse, Xavian Sorey, EJ Lightsey. Who do we want to start with? Because I got thoughts on all three. Covered all three dating back to well into their high school careers. So excited to at least talk about these careers.
I think the Makai Muse one was the most surprising today just because of how much time he got as a starter, albeit it was on special teams. But
correct,
he was kind of a prominent name in the fix. So that one surprised the fan base the most.
Correct. So this was obviously everybody knows, an undersized kid coming out of high school. Started his high school career at Grayson. Actually was good enough to get onto the field at a place like that is just, especially during that time, was loaded down with Power 5 athletes. Not saying that he wasn't. He obviously deemed to be one, but didn't look like one early on in his career, despite the fact that he managed to make his way onto the football field. Ended up finishing out his high school career at Central Gwinnett. And I'm telling you right now, if we had all the multi-million-dollar production studios, they'd be running his high school highlight tapes right here next to my face, because man's Man's high school highlight tape is just something you've never seen. Okay, I'm talking every single play for like 5 minutes straight is 90-yard boomers. Okay, just holy shit, fireworks everywhere. But he's 5'7", okay? And that was the whole thing about him the entire time. He did turn down mid-major offers, okay? I'm not talking about like big schools, okay? They were Division I offers, and he would have gone on to play college football there. But he thought he was a Power 5 football player. Everything about his inclination to and want and drive to play college football was about the fact that he believed that he was 3 inches short of being what he thought he was, okay? So he thought he was going to go out and prove that 3 inches, and I think he did every bit of that over the last, 36 months that he's been at the University of Georgia. My understanding of this situation was that this kid loved Georgia, does love Georgia. Okay, obviously he sacrificed financially to do so, to play at the University of Georgia, but he wanted a bigger role and thinks he's good enough to have a bigger role. And at Georgia, he might not have had that opportunity. In fact, I'm gonna tell you, he probably wouldn't have had that opportunity. So with the regards to Makai Muse, it makes sense. I hope he ends up going to a big, like a Power 5 program. I hope this isn't, I want to go get 80 touches at Memphis, because I think he could have gotten that out of high school, with all due respect. I think this kid's good enough to go play in a Power 5 conference and be a feature somewhere, because we've seen him. If you go back and watch the spring game, man, and it's not like evaluating quarterbacks. They're hitting those dudes. They're trying to tackle them. You go back and watch that spring game and try to find me the first person that tackled that dude out in space. Mm-hmm. You're not going to find one. That stuff applies. I don't care if you're 5'7". That type of ability with the ball in your hand needs to be accentuated or accented somewhere. So I hope it happens for him.
And not to mention that, he showed that he's a viable threat on special teams this year, which is super valuable as a player like that, to go out and say, okay, not only do we need a receiver, but we need someone who can make a special teams impact. He's a perfect fit for that.
Don't tell my mentions that. My mentions told me that they were praising Jesus that he was gone because they made him nervous on punts, which immediately, I think this is I always find myself doing this. Catching punts has become much, much harder.
Yes.
Okay, much, much harder. It's no longer, oh, look, that's a beautiful spiral and the nose is coming down on me. That's not how it is anymore. Okay, every punter, for Christ's sakes, the kid from Tennessee can punt with both feet. Okay, right and left-footed. Almost all of them are rugby-style punters. The ball does not spin like it used to. The ball spins like a knuckleball in the air forever. So what used to be, oh, that guy's nice and settled under that football, look around the sport. That's not what it looks like, okay? It doesn't look like that anymore. So whoever's at punt return next year going to look the same way. And by the way, if you ever have a problem with the player, the question gets asked. The question got asked about Makai Muse this year. And guess what Kirby did? Kirby looked at the reporter and said, have you ever done that? And he said, no. He said, have you ever caught a rugby-style punter? And he said, no. And he goes, it's really, really hard. That guy's the best at it that we have, so he's out there. Like, that's always the answer. The guy's always the best in the coach's mind, but for some reason, no one believes him until the second best gets out there and doesn't look like the best, and then it's hindsight.
Well, the funniest part of it was in 2022 when Ladd had those hiccups against Kent State. It was, oh my God, we need to get Ladd out of there. There's got to be someone better than Ladd. Ladd makes me nervous. So you're always going to be nervous of that because punts are hard to catch. So you're going to have a couple of muffs this season.
Yeah, I mean, one of your most surefire wide receivers struggled with it. And then this year, I mean, especially Georgia fans this year too, like you saw very early on how electric he was in the punt return game. Yeah. So even if he does have a drop or two in totality in the entire season, which is basically what he had this year, I think you can take that trade-off for like, oh, he might take this next one to the house. Every single time he touches the ball, there's a chance that he takes it for a touchdown.
He lost one muff punt, muff two, right?
Yeah, one went out of bounds recently.
At Auburn?
Yeah.
I think it was at Auburn. He had one.
Yeah.
And then he looked kind of sus against Tech once, I think.
Mm-hmm. But I think he muffed 3 this year. I think he lost 1.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, it was no more than 5.
Yeah. But here's what I was trying to get to. I think if you score a touchdown on punt for the first time since what?
Mecole Hardman?
2018.
Yeah, Mecole Hardman. So the first time in 5 years. If you do something that we ain't done in 5 years and we're an elite football program, you might be able to put it on the turf once.
And you got a glimpse of what you might have at one next year, too, because of what Georgia did in the SEC championship game.
Oh, yeah, with Anthony Evans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, such a good call. I was shocked. I think we talked about this Monday. I was stunned Alabama didn't notice.
Well,
they ran it on very, very late.
I saw it as soon as he came. I was
late.
like, Anthony Evans is standing behind Makai. Are they going to really try this right now?
They showed it for a very quick second on the TV broadcast, and I immediately was like, Why is Anthony Evans out there on the field?
The reason it was so noticeable is because it wasn't like here on comes the punt team. We know we're going to do this at this opportunity. No. They had 11 guys on the field. Kirby pulled the gunner off and then ran Anthony Evans from the sideline where he was at all the way to the back of the middle of the field. And I'm like, hey, who's paying attention over there? Where are the analysts at? They're not in the headset because not a single soul from Alabama saw it. And I don't know how. Like, that's one of those coaching staffs that you would think doesn't miss that. I think Ben Woke was sitting next to me. I asked him the same question. Like, how does nobody notice that? How am I the only one that's up here screaming like my head? And he saw one Bama kid on the far sideline notice it, but not too late. Ball had been snapped. But anyways, special teams matter, I guess. Yep. And we'll find out. We'll find out how much better of a punt returner you can possibly have next year. So, yeah, wanted an expanded role for sure. You got that smirk on your face every time I talk about special teams. I just won't do it anymore.
Hey, you finally said they mattered.
Yeah, sarcastically. Xavian Sorey listened a lot more than they realized. Okay, now in that Patreon post yesterday, I said both these guys will probably hit the portal anyways. But the fact that Nyland Green took 2 days to do so and Xavian Sorey took 3 days to do so tells me they listened, again, a lot more than most people thought they would heading into this decision.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of transfer portal entries are like, oh, that baby's open. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put my name in. But, yeah, it seemed like they very much so at least listened to one final pitch or, like, listen to what the coaching staff had to say one last time just to make sure that they knew that was 100% what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the retention that you see at UGA. That's what makes them so much different than all these others. It's why you had Brock Vandergriff basically sit on the bench for 3 years willingly. You had Carson Beck do the same until he got his shot. So the retention at Georgia's elite. There's no hiding that.
Xavian was a really, really tough eval. He remained a tough eval all the way throughout his 3 years at the University of Georgia. But even coming out of high school, he's playing in I want to say Lakeland. I want to say he was at Lakeland first or some orange and black school in Middle Florida and was playing outside the box. So they were basically playing traditional outside linebacker. Basically, if you watch Friday Night's Mike, basically what Camden was asking Elias Williams to do, which is, hey, you're our best player. We need you to rush sometimes and get after the quarterback, but we also need you to kind of make every play in space, okay? But we also need you to impact every passing opportunity. So if that's the case, where are we going to stick you? We're going to stick you just on the extension of the box, and we're going to make you play all the screen game. We're going to ask you to rush the passer every once in a while, and you're going to shut down any type of stretch run game. We'll handle the rest of the box with bodies. That's what a lot of defensive coordinators do with elite talents that look and move like Xavian Sorey does. Xavian Sorey is 6'3". He was 217 pounds in high school, 215, 220 pounds in high school. He's gotten up to about 225 since he's been in college. But there was always going to be this, where do we play this guy? You know what I mean? Where do we let him rush the passer? Because that's what he did a lot last year, and he showed some skill sets doing that, right? I think he ran through a right tackle at some point last year. I mean, flat through his body, just exploded him. Okay, so he had the ability to do that. But you're 6'3" and you're never going to be 250 pounds, 260 pounds. So you can't really play on the lines of scrimmage on first and second down. We might be able to situationally pass rush you, but that's not enough playing time to connote your skill set. So how do we get you on the field? You know who else they're running into this same problem with? Jalen Walker. It's not as bad, but it's very much so a very similar situation where, man, he's this great situational pass rusher. That's awesome. What do you do with him on first and second down? Well, he's going to have to learn how to get in the box, stand up, and read keys. Well, we don't have enough time to let him grow at that position because we got this guy named C.J. Allen that's already ready to do it. Or we've had N'Kobe, or we've had Channing, or we've had Quay. So Xavian doesn't get the ability to play on Saturdays and walk through his mistakes like Quay Walker did. Quay Walker got 18 months to go out there and figure it out as an athlete that had been doing this at Crisp County High School. Xavian Sorey didn't have the opportunity to do that, or at least when he did, he didn't really maximize on it because he had the first 3 games this year to certainly get after it and try to win that inside linebacker position and show that he could play that true Mike or Willie spot and not just be this situational pass rusher. Again, I think next year they're going to have a much easier ability to allow Jalen Walker to grow into this role. But if you don't, you're going to be in a very similar situation where you're looking into the season and you're like, man, how can we utilize Jalen? Well, we have to play him on third down, and that's pretty much it. Well, that's not it doesn't feel like enough for how talented these individuals are, but it's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, Xavian was one of those players where every now and then you'd see a flash play from him and be like, oh, that's exactly why you were rated as highly as you were coming out of high school. That's the talent and that's the potential that we've been waiting to see on the football field. And then the rest of it is just like, we just don't feel like we're quite there yet. And it's frustrating because you know that it's there. You feel like it can happen. You feel like he can put it all together. But it's also just the waiting and waiting for it to happen, and it quite never does. And you saw it against Alabama. He made that play behind the line of scrimmage, gets called back for a horse collar tackle, but it's like that's one of those moments that we keep waiting for it to happen for him, and it just never quite did, and that's okay. It happens.
You got anything on X?
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you said, it is unfortunate because it is such a talent, and you do see at flashes in time, but it was also one of those things where he wasn't able to do enough, I think, to wedge himself into a consistent role as a starter, whether it be missing assignments or mental mistakes such as that. And that's one of the biggest things that you can't have at Georgia. So,
and it's a spot and it's like this at every spot at Georgia, but really at the linebacker spot, like, bro, the next class, they're just going to bring in 3 more potential All-Americans,
Yeah.
so you better get it right.
And I mean,
quick.
We saw how crucial making a mistake at the linebacker position is this year. Watch the first play at Tennessee. Watch that pass that Alabama had in the SEC championship, where if you're not in the right spot as a linebacker, you're pretty much screwed on defense.
Yeah, they play too many few bodies in the box for linebackers not to be in the correct spots. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, the inexperience at the linebacker position definitely came back to hurt them at spots this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did. But, yeah, you made a great point that I was going to hit on is that, especially at linebacker at Georgia, you probably don't get as much leeway as you do at most positions, especially when you do have a C.J. Allen and a Raylan Wilson who are already getting mixed into the rotation and who you're like, we have to give these guys snaps. And if we're getting a little bit more inconsistency from you, then we're just going to move on to these guys because if we think they can be more consistent, then that's who we're going to play.
Or you get into a situation, this wasn't the situation with Xavian. Xavian's one of the more talented human beings that's ever walked the planet, okay, in terms of a height, weight, speed, just athleticism standpoint. All right, this next guy, though, that hit the portal today, E.J. Lightsey, I mean, it was just not only are these other guys a little bit more physically gifted than you, I mean, we're going to give them run. I mean, C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson are going to get playing time. I know, E.J. was dealing with some shoulder issues this year, and this is a football player that I actually have like a predated Georgia relationship with. I actually shot his original commitment video to Florida. He's from Fitzgerald, Georgia. Committed to the University of Florida originally. Georgia continued to pursue Shamar James. Shamar James ended up committing to Florida. A couple of days later, E.J. Lightsey decommitted. A couple of weeks later, he ended up committing again to the University of Georgia. Obviously had the accident. He got shot in Fitzgerald, Georgia, just months before enrolling at the University of Georgia. So guy's been through a lot, but he's ultimately extremely talented as well. Just not the caliber that some of these other guys were. But sources told me they think this guy's an NFL football player too. It's just hard to get on the field when the other 5 guys in front of you are NFL football players as well.
Yeah, and they're maybe a little bit ahead of you in progression as far as being able to read an offense and make other mental choices like that. So,
or just more physically gifted than you, which you're right on the processing ability. I think with C.J. Allen, I think C.J. Allen's naturally gifted with seeing the right things and reacting to the right things he's supposed to, which I think is a gift that certain linebackers have. But from a physical standpoint of every guy in that room, I mean, E.J. Lightsey's right behind Pop, and then Pop's behind the rest of them. You know what I mean? And maybe Troy Bowles on the bottom. But nonetheless, those guys in that room, and Smile's still in it, hasn't made any type of announcement yet. Smile, uber athletic. Both the freshmen, Raylan, CJ, super athletic. Jalen Walker, super athletic. So all these guys are really, really gifted from a God-given standpoint, whereas, EJ has it, but doesn't have it in spades like some of these guys do. What do you think about potentially adding the London Humphreys kid?
I think it's going to be a great addition to the X position. I know everyone sees it's like, it's Lab McConkey's replacement. We've already been how that's not the correct analysis on it, but I mean, you don't know what Ra Thomas is going to do in this draft. Marcus Rosemi Jack Saints also draft eligible. So, I mean, there's probably going to be more of an exodus.
As is Dominic Lovett.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be an X. I'm talking about more of the X position.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
There's going to be more of an exodus in the wide receiver spot, so you do need to probably go out and get in the portal.
Yeah, I like it because, I mean, we don't know what Rojak's going to do. We don't know what Ra Thomas is going to do or any of those people this year regarding NFL draft or anything like that. But the reason why I would like bringing him in is because I feel like it would allow you to do more things with guys like Dom Lovett if he does return Dylan Bell. I think that gives you a lot of leeway and a lot of opportunity for them to plug and play them if you have a guy like Humphreys who can play the X position and he even poses a threat deep or things like that. So I think it just gives you more creativity to work with if you are Mike Bobo, especially with the upcoming freshman class, or not upcoming freshman class, but the freshmen that you had this year that are going to be sophomores this next year. I think you have a lot of opportunity to get some work in.
It would have really, really helped. And this is like wishing and dreaming for this staff. But could you imagine like how immediately Jeremiah Smith would play at this university?
Yeah.
Like Jeremiah Smith would walk in immediately and get 15 touches or 15 targets.
He would be George Pickens.
Oh, he'd be A.J. Green.
Yeah.
George had to earn the right to get onto the field and punch somebody in the face in 2019. Okay, towards the end of it. It wasn't like everyone knew. I mean, he was making plays in fall camp so much so that videos were leaking out. But do you remember what number he was wearing when that video leaked out his freshman year?
I believe it was 81.
83. Okay, he was wearing some ugly digits, some digits that George Pickens ain't never strapping up in, all right? But eventually he got into that one. You know what I mean? But it took a while.
I think he had a pretty good debut with Georgia, if I remember correctly.
Did he?
I think he had like 5.
I thought it was a slow burn.
No, I remember like the first – because they played like Murray State the first week of 2019. And it was like, oh, George Pickens is our guy. And then it kind of leveled out through the rest of the year. I'll look that up when you –
I think, too, what wide receivers should understand, and it's something that we've talked about on this show, is like who Mike Bobo is as a coordinator. Like when he knows he has a guy, he's going to let everybody know that he has a guy on offense. And we didn't really get to see that as much as we thought we would with Brock Bowers because of his injury. But like when Brock Bowers was 100% yealthy, that was Georgia's guy that's who they lean on. And Bobo kind of did it in variations of like, oh, Dylan Bell's having a day today. Okay, well, then we're going to get him a whole lot of touches today. And we're going to make sure that we get the ball in his hands and whatnot. So I think as someone like Jeremiah Smith, I think that's important to acknowledge of like, oh, Mike Bobo's a coordinator. I'm going to get my touches and he's going to draw things up for me. Maybe Georgia should be considered.
Oh, no, don't read Twitter.
Yeah, no, George had 4 receptions for 78 yards in his first game, 5 receptions for 84 yards.
He had the big diving catch.
Yeah.
Okay.
He had 2 touchdowns in his first 3 games. So, I mean, he started off hot.
And then got cold?
It was like just because
the
offense as a whole.
Yeah,
that was the
the dichotomy of his career.
Yeah, James Coley.
Honestly, hot and cold, to no fault of his own, except for some of those times. You know, Florida. We'll leave it there. I was thinking if you do land an X, and if he's a true guy, like we've heard about these things, right? We've heard about people coming in. I think we heard about Ra Thomas coming in, thinking that he was going to be this. They thought he was going to be this NFL dude. Man, he might be. I was told when he first got here, this was a 2-year play. I don't know if it remained a 2-year play, but when he first got here, it was a 2-year play. So if they still believe him to be an NFL guy, you have an X in the room. However, you know, there's a couple games this year he looked all right. But are we out here saying Ra Thomas was one of the best 6 X receivers in the SEC this year?
No.
I wouldn't say that.
Some would argue in the chat right now he wasn't even the best X on the team. Some would say Dylan Bell was better.
Yeah.
So he wasn't what he was sold to be during camp. What he was sold to be during camp was just wait. Just wait. Just wait until this dude turns out. If this guy's one of those, you alleviate a lot of pressure and stress as an offense when you have one of these guys on the outside.
And it's so interesting because anytime anybody in that program talks about Ra Thomas, it's like, oh, if there's a 50-50 ball, I want Ra Thomas catching. Like that's the guy that I want to pick because they obviously they see that stuff happening at practice. They are very aware of what he is capable of. And, you know, he dealt with some injuries this year, late in the year. And then there was that notion of like, oh, he's kind of having to pick up the playbook a little bit and things like that. So maybe year 2 is where it's like, holy crap, that's what everybody's been waiting on.
All right, I have an actual topic here. We talk about the receiver position. We've addressed the running back, activity that's going to be made available in the portal. But what other positions should they be addressing in the portal right now? Because I have like 2 or 3. The third one, tinfoil hat. But I guarantee you the third one that I'm going to mention is already being explored because I know how Kirby Smart operates.
I think an interior defensive line guy would be nice.
Bingo. I got defensive line, whether it's depth at defensive end. Because remember, and I don't mean to run over you here, but like Michael Williams is great, but his backup this year was Tramel Walthour. I love Tramel Walthour. He was a damn good dog, stuck around for a long time. There's a pretty big drop-off there between A and B. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then Tyrion Ingham-Dawkins, who was obviously battling through some injuries this year.
And I think if you got an interior defensive line guy, like this year I noticed a lot, and I know that this is also because of who Michael Williams is and his skill set, but they moved him around a lot. I mean, there was a point in the game against Alabama where he was over the center. I mean, they had him in the middle of that defensive line. And again, that's because you can do that with a guy like Michael Williams. But I think also if you have an interior defensive line guy and you can just say, Michael, you stay out there and just go to work, baby. I think that's where you could see a huge uptick in his production. I think this one's more so just because we really don't know what is out there other than a few guys that have gotten some good run, but maybe a safety. I don't know. That might be one I dabble with as well.
Yeah, because, I mean, just assuming that you lose Javon Bullard and Tyke Smith this year, you're going to need to replace someone who has in-game experience in that position. So I like safety. I like interior defensive lineman. Most anywhere in the front seven, to put an extra body there is always helpful. So.
Mm-hmm. They've already addressed it, but I think you are going to need a receiver at some point, depending on what happens with the three names that we're paying attention to. Well, four, I guess. I think we can just assume – I shouldn't assume anything with super seniors, but the four names are Marcus Rasimi, Jack Saint, Lad McConkey, Ra Thomas, and Dom Lovett. Those are the four quote-unquote decisions that you're kind of waiting on. I feel good about saying you're going to lose at least 50% of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least 50% of those. Mm-hmm. So you're going to need to bring in some production at the receiver position. Let me ask you this. If you're Kirby Smart right now, okay, still waiting on a decision from Carson Beck, are you calling some of these quarterbacks in the portal right now?
I wouldn't.
Why not?
Because it tells people in the room that you're like, you know what, yeah, we like you, we recruited you, we're heavy on you, but now that you're here and there's a chance for you to play, we're going to go out and get someone else. I just don't know what kind of message that would send.
You have a redshirt freshman in the room. If Carson Beck leaves tomorrow, you have a redshirt freshman in the room with 0 career starts.
Right.
You think you're going to go try to win an SEC title with that, with your record, with your schedule next year? You think your head coach is going to do that?
I wouldn't be against it, honestly. I mean,
I wouldn't either, but I don't see him lining up for let me take my lumps with a rookie quarterback. I don't know. That's just me. I also don't see him opening himself for being completely unprepared for the idea that Carson Beck might go to the draft. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, if it lingers on any longer, like if it continues to go into this process of like we still really don't know what Carson Beck is going to do, I think you at least have to pick up the phone and kind of throw your name out there, put your name in the mix and say like, hey, just put our name in your mind. Like, hey, maybe you want to come over here and consider us. Maybe we can have a discussion. At least do that to where you're already putting yourself in that conversation. But I don't know if you would just want to full-fledged say
look, I'm not saying go call Dante Moore and tell him you want him to spend the next 3 years in Athens. Mm-hmm. But giving Riley Leonard a preliminary phone call ain't going to kill nobody.
Yeah.
No.
You know what I mean?
No,
That's all I'm saying. And look, when people hear that, I don't want them to say I'm automatically questioning Gunnar Stockton's ability. I'm questioning, again, whether or not Kirby Smart is going to enter a season with a redshirt freshman as his preliminary starter. You know how I know he won't do this? Because he didn't do it in 2020. He didn't do it in 2021, right? He was active in the portal market with guys like JT Daniels because he didn't want to lean on a guy like Carson Beck or didn't want to have to worry about whether or not it's going to be Carson Beck or the walk-on in Stetson Bennett. And guess what? It wound up being both of those guys anyways. I'm just telling you, he probably going to prepare himself or protect himself from the idea that he's going to walk into something quote-unquote blind at the quarterback position.
And even if Gunnar Stockton is the guy, like if he is everything that he was advertised coming out of high school, you definitely still don't want your room being Gunnar Stockton and then, true freshman Dylan Raiola and true freshman Ryan Puglisi.
Which are great football players. I'm not throwing 18, 19-year-old kids out into the wolves like you got next year.
And plus with the 12-team playoff, that's more games that you're putting on your quarterback's shoulders. That's more opportunity for something to happen. If crap hits the fan, that's just more opportunity where you might have to dig into that too deep more than likely than you would other seasons.
I mean, no, it's a good point with that, and I think that the experience is certainly valuable in that aspect, but I just don't know what kind of message that sends to pull in a guy to get all this way and then say, hey, by the way, we're going to pull in this third-year quarterback, even though we've recruited you heavily, even though we've said we really want you on the team and we really believe in your talents, but when it comes time for you to take the reins, you're not ready yet.
Yeah.
Especially with a guy like Gunnar Stockton, who will have been in the program for close to 2 years now.
Yeah, it's already been 2 years.
Yeah.
Early enrolled in January of 2022. 2021.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, yeah, he been there a minute.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
I'm with you. December of 2021, official January of 2022.
Right. Not 2 full seasons, but
Yeah.
pretty much 2 full years.
A year and a half. Anyways, I'm just saying I think it's something that you explore.
It's not a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad idea at all.
And I also know that every every stone gets turned over at the University of Georgia. Every single one. I remember listening to Chris Sims tell a story about Bill Belichick because he worked. You know Chris Sims, don't you? He worked for the New England Patriots as a regional scout for like 1 year. Worked in their developmental department, and he said like week 2. I think NFL trade window doesn't open until like middle of the year. I don't know their full rules, but like 2 months before the trade window is open, Belichick had like a full list. It was almost like the whole damn league that he was given to his scouting department to say, hey, go study up on these guys. These are the guys we might be interested in. And in the NFL, you're only trading like two guys maybe in a total year if you're making a run for it. This was a guy that was turning over literally the entire league. And when asked, hey, is it like that anywhere else? No, it is not like that everywhere. Here it is. I would imagine it's like that at Georgia. I don't think there is a single player that is quality, that is Georgia quality, that doesn't get a phone call. Not a single one in the portal.
Yeah.
I don't care what position you are. I don't care who they have returning starting. It does not matter. If you are Georgia caliber, if they think you can play there, they're giving you a phone call in the portal.
I mean, Georgia knows better than a lot of people, especially at a program like Georgia, where you're not going to basically rearrange your entire roster from the transfer portal, but you're going to get some contributors from the transfer portal if you need them. They know how important one singular transfer can be to your season. I mean, Darian Kendrick, that's a very great example. JT Daniels, for what that 2020 season was, I mean, he left you on a high note. He left you feeling really good about your program and helped you continue to ascend that season into what next year was the national title. So when they do take these transfer portal kids, they know how impactful they can be. So if you do think that a kid is Georgia caliber, picking up the phone definitely is not going to hurt you.
What they haven't done is a developmental play, okay, in the portal. They don't do that. They don't do, oh, you got 2 years of eligibility. You got 3 years of eligibility. What are you going to do? What's
I
up?
mean, Tyke Smith, I feel like, was that.
I think they expected Tyke Smith to play for them. He blew his knee up pretty quickly. So I think they expected Tyke Smith to impact them at the star position really quickly.
Right.
In my opinion. Or at least from what I remember them talking about when he was getting
I mean, he was an
in the
All-American
portal.
when they got him.
He was.
Yes.
I thought they were going to expect him to play immediately. Speaking of the star position, I think they might be really, really happy with Jonel Aguero. This is what they've seen in practice. The game tape hasn't looked great, but he's a freshman, so it is what it is.
A lot of get your eyes right before you, hit the field.
No doubt. And we mentioned the check your bases, do your research, do your homework on the quarterback thing because Carson Beck is very much so still in the decision-making process, it sounds like. I was calling around to some sources today within the scouting world just trying to get a gauge on how long this process takes. Because normally, the last 2 years for you guys, this decision and this NFL draft decision has come in the locker room after a daggum natty. So there ain't no emotional decisions tied to it. It's, ooh, we won our ring. Let's go get that cash. You know, it's like immediately like that for most of these high-profile football players. We're not in this lingering window. It doesn't feel like we're in this lingering window. Also, it's happening in January, not in December. So in January, all of the NFL evaluations have almost been completed. All right, at that point, it's about further due diligence, okay? Finding out who the person is. But who the player is, they've already established their thoughts on that by January. So now that timetable has been drastically brought up to now, right? December 7th is today's date, okay? And this college, I got it written down here. College advisory committees. These college advisory committees started meeting with these players, I'm told, on Monday. Now, at most universities, not Georgia. At most universities, these are like 48-hour decision-making processes, okay? They bring you in, they sit you down, you'll have a long talk. They kind of give you your evaluation that they've sought out from whoever they can talk to in the league, whoever's willing to talk to them, give them information, and they bring it to you and say, here, son, this is what it's looking like. All right, and here's what we might be able to provide for you on the NIL front. That's kind of, if it comes down to that. That's kind of how these discussions normally work at most schools. And then I come to find out that Georgia, as you would expect, is far more thorough in these processes than anybody else, okay? Maybe even Alabama, because at this point in his career, Kirby Smart has so many of these connections and warranted, valued relationships in the NFL, right? Where people care about this dude's opinion. So much so that he has all of these different connections at all of these different schools. I had one source tell me today that at the University of Georgia, after the 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7-day committee process, you have the full layout of exactly how that sumbitch fitting to go down. The full layout. They tell you, boom, 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 boom. We talked to this. This is how it's fixing to go down. So at Georgia, these players go through a much more extensive and lengthy process, and that's why I think you're seeing some of these decisions be, quote-unquote, drawn out. I just think they're collecting as much information as possible.
That's great for them. I mean, it's a big decision to make, especially if there is especially if there is a decision to make for yourself of if you could come back or if you could go to the NFL. I mean, every single ounce of information you could gather on what that might look like for you, that's valuable information to know.
Yeah, I mean, being told kind of how your future will play out if you do X is extremely helpful than rather just going somewhere and saying, hey, this might work for me.
Oh, it'd be dope. Every time I go through a job application process or an interview process, I would love for someone to sit me and tell me down exactly how it's finna happen.
What's going on?
I'll have to do some research on that one.
What?
Yeah, love those texts, man. Love those texts. Yeah, I'm going to have to do some digging on that one.
On what?
I'll tell you after the show. I can't tell you a live show. I just got a text from people. People can be zooming in on their phones. Did you know you can zoom in on your phone nowadays on YouTube? Like if you're watching us on YouTube and you want to look at this fine 25-year commemorative coin that our man Claude Felton delivered to yours truly. Actually, didn't. His assistant did. But nonetheless, if you want to zoom in on one of these, you don't even have to do it like our boy Kirby did. Look at this. It's got a G on the back. Oh, no, it's got Sanford on the back. Okay. So how about that? Anyways, if you want to zoom in nowadays on YouTube, you can. So if you want to find out who just texted me, you probably can figure it out.
Nah, you're fine. Your phone
Someone said
wasn't on
lug
screen.
me. Give me that live nug. No.
Dude, all the Spotify listeners are going to be like, what the hell just
What the
happened?
hell
to
just
him?
My
happened?
audio just go
The
out?
10-second dead
Good thing
air.
on Spotify is it's a video product now as well. Did
Oh,
you
yeah.
know that?
Oh,
That's
really?
true, yeah.
Yep, we upload
like Rogan
MP4s
here.
on Spotify. Yep, so that's a good news. But if you're gonna watch us, you might as well watch us on YouTube and make sure you hit that thumbs up button while you do so. Let's move on. There was some video that was leaked this week during social or on social media. I don't even think it was leaked. I think it was part of an SEC Nation thing.
It's the SEC Inside thing they do every week.
Okay, so the SEC Inside thing that they do every week, and this is what you're going to hear right here is Kirby Smart and Nick Saban talking prior to the game on Saturday, and what we think, and listen to the tone of this discussion, and we'll talk about it afterwards, but we think this carries some weight. What's
also,
up?
mind you, Nick Saban has a smile on his face the
entire
entire
time.
time. Like, looks genuinely happy.
Yes.
So,
But we're right about one thing. I'm too old for this game. No, you ain't. Y'all did a great job this year. Nobody's done as good a job as you have. This long, this to me, that's good. Try to enjoy it, man. Hell of a coach. Appreciate all you did for me.
That part right there. Enjoy it, brother.
Try to enjoy
Try
it.
to enjoy it. You're a hell of a coach. I appreciate everything you did for me. Did. Now I know he don't coach there no more, but did for me. What are your thoughts?
It's definitely that last part where he's
Yeah.
like, try to enjoy it. Because, like, why would you be telling him to try and enjoy, like, the SEC championship game? Like, of course you enjoy that moment. Of course you're already going to enjoy your team being able to fight for a conference title. Something that he has done many a times. I think it's his 12th time fighting for a SEC title. So for Kirby to say, try to enjoy it, that's just weird to me. Because obviously Kirby's not like, oh, try to enjoy this ass whooping we're about to give you. Like, try to enjoy this moment. Interesting.
Yeah, you also don't tell a guy like Nick Saban, who's been to more SEC championships than any head coach in history, like, hey, try to enjoy this one, unless you know that there's something special about this one, whether it be his last year doing it. Also, it's not like one of these things where it's like, hey, it was 2 years before we saw each other last time. It might be another 2 years before we play again. They're scheduled to play next year.
Yeah.
So you're guaranteed to see each other again should Nick Saban be the coach there. So the fact that there was this kind of embrace from the two of them, it felt very much like the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning 2015 AFC Championship thing where it's like, hey, great, hell of a career. Thank you for all you did, yada, yada, yada. Kind of your final goodbyes. That's what it felt like to me.
It was no it was nothing from Saban other than the shit-eating grin on his face. It was the words and the tone from Kirby, right, that made us think that this might be the last one. At least in my opinion.
Well, I mean, also to like be like, hey, you're right, I am too old for this shit. Like, there was also they did a joint interview one time, and I think that like prior to the game, I think Saban asked Kirby like, you know, what's some advice you would give me for someone my age? And Kirby said, I'm not going to be doing this when I'm your age.
I don't think so either.
And Saban goes, you're smarter than me. So I mean, just dropping all these little nuggets to where it's like, I'm here longer than I wanted to be. I'm ready to go. That's what it feels like to me. That's what I said. Part of my take was at the start of the year. I feel like he's had 1 foot in retirement this entire season.
And I mean, going off of that same interview, I'll put the tinfoil hat on for this one. Kirby even said like, "Oh, he finally texted me back for the first time this year." So like, maybe that was a text of like, "Oh, hey Kirby, by the way, like this is gonna happen this year if things go the way I think they will."
All right, so super tinfoil hat on here. All right, if I could promise you. Georgia fans in the chat right now, I'm talking to y'all. I know we got some Bammers hanging out today, and that's cool. Appreciate y'all for being here. Make sure you're subscribing. We do this every Monday through Thursday, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. What if I told you that this was indeed Nick Saban's last year of coaching college football? Win, lose, or draw. Let's say win. Let's say he wins another title, and he gets to walk off in the sunset, and you never see him again, okay? And you just go on to do what Georgia's supposed to do with an Alabama vacancy. However, they get Glenn Schumann, and that's like the parting gift. Saban's gone. The hold and whatever you feel that he has over you for all these years is now disappeared. Okay, but they're taking Schu. How do you feel if that's the case? If you're a Georgia fan,
that's a very complexing feeling because it's like, oh yeah, finally great career, respect to the GOAT. And then, but we're going to take your best assistant coach with us. And then it's like, man.
Who's a grad, by the way?
Yeah.
Bama grad.
I mean, I don't know if this is just me, but I don't want Saban to leave yet. From a person who wants to keep beating Saban. I mean, you've beat him once in his entire career at Alabama, actually, twice. You beat him twice in your entire career in Alabama, once under Kirby Smart. So it's like, if Saban leaves after this year, Bama fans are going to be able to hold that above your head for the rest of time where, yeah, Kirby Smart's a great coach, but he only went 1-5. What?
That's not good. I'll tell you after the show.
Dude, now I'm going to be on the edge of my seat.
I mean, it's the same stuff we've been hearing. It's this time of year. This time of year, okay, I always get 2 or 3 big names that you're like, no freaking way that kid would ever leave. Why would that kid ever leave? And then, you know, it's a war. It's a straight-up war. Can we keep them? That kind of deal. This happens at every school.
Yeah.
Every single school. Texas had to come out basically on school letterhead and say Arch Manning's sticking around. Like, it happens at everybody, everywhere. So it's not that big of a deal, but it is that big of a deal. I think that's your answer of I want to beat Saban, I want to keep beating Saban. That's the tough Georgia fan talking. All right? Let me ask you that question at the end of the fourth quarter on Saturday afternoon. You tell me your answer on that one. Because I guarantee you're going to be like, damn, nah, I don't want to see that dude no more. I don't want to see that dude no more.
Hell no, keep bringing him out.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to keep seeing him in Atlanta. That's for dang sure. Good Lord.
We call that fake toughness right there.
That's not fake.
That's that foos.
That's that foos.
That's that
Definitely
foos.
That's that fake toughness.
It's definitely not fake, but okay.
Anyways, I got a tease for you, boys. I got a big tease. It's like the biggest tease of the year.
For us or for the audience?
Well, you guys know.
Yeah, I was say I feel like we know what the tease is.
I mean, is this the biggest thing we do every year? I think it's the thing I get asked most about.
As of now, yes, but I think the Caffies could
Caffies might take it over.
Caffies could be big.
They could be huge. Anyways, this is the one I get asked about all the time, and it's the Signing Day Super Show. All right, and the Signing Day Super Show is coming back this year, and it's coming back better than ever. Every single player will be broken down. We will give you an evaluation on all 30 signees this year. Luckily, the last couple of years, they ain't been waiting around. It's been before 8 o'clock. We start getting 20, 25 faxes, and we're done. All right, so we're going to have every article released, and then we're going to come on here, and we're going to give you the video analysis and the video breakdown, highlights, fits, stories about their recruitment process, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, I think we're going to have nearly a dozen of them on the show. So we're going to have a bunch of guests on that day. It is National Signing Day, early National Signing Day, but we call it National Signing Day around here. December 20th. All right, we will be live from 9 a.m. to noon. Okay, I know we're normally a nighttime show on this network, but we will be live from 9 a.m. to noon, December 20th. So tell your bosses, tell whoever that is responsible for your work hours to piss off on December 20th. You're going to be hanging with the boys, all right, from 9 a.m. to noon. All right, we're going to give you 3 hours of a broadcast, and it's going to be epic.
Cannot wait. Get to be a part of it for the first time.
Hell yeah. Used to. I think last year I did it in the studio all by myself. That was intriguing for sure. But this year we got the boys, so we should be good. So make sure you're showing up on National Signing Day, and make sure you're hitting a thumbs up tonight on tonight's broadcast. We got 3. We're going to give them 3 to end tonight's show. 3 things that you learned from this football season. I think it's only right that Kirby goes dead last, and I'll go first. Here we go.
Par for the course.
Number 1. I learned this year. I think I should have known this originally, but sometimes talent be getting in the way, and fun and flash gets in the way every once in a while. But the number 1 thing that I learned this year is to trust the processor. Okay, it's the most important thing at the quarterback's position I have found, and I will stand by probably the rest of time. You can talk about athleticism. You can talk about the ability to throw on the run. You can talk about being able to play outside of structure, okay? But I will push all of my chips in on the player who processes the best, because they will go out there, they will see the field properly, and they will put the ball where it's supposed to be. On top of that, all right, it just so happened that Carson's one of the best throwers of the football that the University of Georgia has seen in a long time as well. So you got this elite processor stacked with this elite arm talent and thrower of the football. Maybe he's not the biggest or the fastest or the most athletic or whatever, but he is the best processor, and he has an elite arm. I learned that this year. Trust the processor. And it's something that Kirby has stood by for years, and I think it's almost to his detriment, right? And sometimes he gets shit on at the quarterback position in his decision-making process, but that's what it's always been about. It's always been about picking the guy who processes the information the best and protects the football and operates the offense, not operates his show. You know what I mean? So I think I have settled on that as well. If you give me an elite processor, I'll go win games at a 72% completion percentage clip, okay? The other thing, the portal matters more. That's what I've learned this year. And I should have learned that last year, but I really learned it this year. And I don't want to blame losses on portal players, okay? I just want to point some things out. In the last football game that you played, all right, just look at it. Tresman Marshall made a huge impact for Alabama in that football game, a massive one. All right, he was on the field almost every snap defensively. He was one of their key leaders, all right? Jermaine Burton obviously did a lot during that year for that football program, turned out to be their primary weapon. It mattered for them down the stretch. All right, Jaden Daniels, a transfer quarterback at LSU, it obviously mattered for that football program. You can go all around the sport right now, and you can find impactful players on almost every single roster that were not there 12 months ago. I don't know if Georgia has, hit a home run on one of these guys recently. All right, the last one I can think about that was ooh, thank God he saved portions of your season, in my opinion, was probably Lawrence Cager. All right, maybe Tyke Smith, but it took 2.5 years before that one really panned out, if you will, in terms of results. Do you have any rebuttals on this in terms of when was the last time an impactful player at the University of Georgia came out of the portal? Because right now he looks like he's just getting serviceable starters, and that's fine. But schools like Florida State damn near went to a college football playoff because they got a dude like Keon Coleman out of the transfer portal. And that's a little bit different than what Dom Lovett did for you this year.
Darian Kendrick,
hell yeah. I'm with you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you on that one. That dude balled out at corner. So I'm with you. That's a solid suggestion.
Yeah, that's about the only one I can think of.
Yeah, I mean,
That's more
what
recent.
was it last year?
So 1 for 12 of the last 3 years?
Something like that. I mean, last year they didn't take any, did they? That was
No transfers. He talked about it all the time. We took no transfers.
Yeah, that was Kirby Smart's big selling point. We took no transfers. So, I mean, they don't dip in the portal a lot. And like you said, it's to fill holes.
No, I think if you're going to continue like this year, I think they're going to take 2 or 3 guys, maybe 4 in the portal. All right, when you're taking these guys, they the big time college football playoff winners right now. Those guys are going out and balling.
Mm-hmm.
They're going out and balling out for their newfound schools, not 450 yards on the extension of the run game. That's not what it's been. That's what it was for Dominic Lovett this year. And I don't mean to throw shade in. It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. Why didn't that maximize like it should have, in my opinion? All right. And the last one, and this one's going to feel like a shot, but a lot of our people listening will feel vindicated. I learned this year that Mike Bobo is about 90% as good as Todd Monken, and that's good enough. It's good enough to win a national title. It's not going to score 65 points in doing so. You're going to have to overcome games where you don't score 40, you only score 27. But he's really, really, really good. All right? He's better than 90% of coordinators in this world. He's better than the top, 1% in college football, in my opinion. But here's where the difference was. Here's the 10% for me. When you got locked up in man coverage in years past under Todd Monken, he refused to allow teams to do it to him. He found ways to get them into zone coverages. He found ways to bunch up and still find ways to move the football, despite the fact that for 2 of the 3 years that he was here, he really didn't have an X receiver. Most of the time, George was either hurt or wasn't available. So they didn't have one. A.D. Mitchell blossomed into one later on into the years, and you saw what that guy did with him. So this was the difference to me. This was the noticeable things, what I learned over a full 13 game sample size. In my opinion, he was about 5 to 10% less than the last guy. And guess what? It's still way better than most. So don't go bitching, moaning, and complaining. You're still one of the haves and not the have-nots. But he's not Todd Monken, and that's okay. And it is, but I noticed the differences in the game that you lost.
And, I think that 10% difference in production comes from the fact that this isn't a Mike Bobo system. Keep that in mind. Mike Bobo was taught this system 2 years ago. So, he's still pretty much learning. He doesn't have all the nooks and crannies that a Todd Monken would have, or hey, they're boxing us up in man coverage right now. We need to figure out how to move guys to get them into zone. So that might develop into that because that's the type of offense that Georgia runs now. But obviously Mike Bobo's not going to have that first year with the reins of the offense.
My first one is
give him 3.
My bad.
What do you got?
My first one is there ain't much in this world that can hinder Georgia from being one of the best teams in the nation. I know they kind of experienced some lulls over the past couple of years, and they had to overcome some things to win those back-to-back national titles, but this was the first year where it really felt like you had to overcome a lot, and you knew that it was going to take a lot for you to win another title this year, whether it be injuries to your star players or deficiencies that you experienced over the last 2 years from the NFL draft. I know you didn't make the playoff, but you were freaking close to doing so, and I think everybody liked Georgia's chances of if they made the playoff this year that they would go and win another title. So there's not much in this world that can hinder you from continuing to run and dominate college football.
And, you make the playoff in a normal college football year. You had basically every conference had a team that could.
7 of 8 you make it this year.
Precisely. Yeah. I don't want to sound somber with this one, but this might have been the end of kind of an era for Georgia of one of the greatest group of Bulldogs in Georgia football history. I have just some names down there on this list, and it's not just everybody, but Brock Bowers, Stetson Bennett, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. Those are guys that when I'm a grandpa or you're a grandpa, that's what you tell your grandchildren about. You tell your
you don't know shit about a tight end, son. You ain't seen Brock Bowers.
Let me tell you about Stetson Bennett. Let me tell you about how great Jordan Davis was and why he's one of the greatest Bulldogs. These last 3 years of Bulldogs that you had, that's one of the greatest. I feel like this year kind of came to an end a little bit. And so that's one thing that I learned this year. My last one, I think we'll recognize 2023 as another pivot in Kirby Smart as a head coach. I think we kind of saw a little bit of a different side of Kirby. One memory that I have this year, and I know it's recent, but when they did the halftime interview and they kind of did the in-game interviews with Kirby Smart, it was never like any of these hesitancies. It wasn't even saying the things like, oh, well, we got to be better here. We're not doing this. Where everything is man, I just love this freaking moment. I'm happy for these kids. And I want us to have fun. That's what I want to say. I want us to have fun in this game and just enjoy and experience this. And we never really saw the ass chewings this year.
Shouts out to the sports psychologist.
Yeah, very different. And so I think we'll recognize this as a pivot kind of a little bit of a new side of Kirby Smart.
I'm serious when I say this. I think Kirby did a lot of inward soul searching. By the way, Jay Will, give him 3. I think Kirby did a lot of soul searching with regards to how he goes about leadership and how he goes about getting the most out of football players. There is still that, right? There is still the I'm going to put my foot in your ass. But it's a lot more nuanced and complex nowadays. He approaches everything differently, like you should in that type of situation. You should not be foot in the gas all the time. You should have some coof about yourself, as my dad would say. What do you got?
So first,
did any of them get stolen? By the way,
no, they didn't.
Hell yeah,
this is good.
creativity at its finest.
First one I have is max exodus and NFL departures from 2 seasons are going to eventually catch up to you. I
Did
feel
you call
like
that max exodus?
mass exodus.
Yeah, there you go.
Mass exodus. Was that not what I said the first
You
time?
said max
I don't know.
exodus.
I didn't
well.
catch it.
It's all good.
Either way, losing talent like that, first round NFL talent, the plethora of draft picks you had, it's eventually going to catch up to you no matter how well you recruit, no matter how well you develop. And I think we saw that this season. There were a couple of places where it's like, hey, they might not be as deep as they were in years past. So that was my first takeaway from it. The second takeaway I had was this is really a team that consistently loves the guys they play for and loves the team they play for. It's not like a lot of players in college football nowadays, it's a business decision to come here, and it certainly is to play for Georgia. But when you come to Georgia, you love for playing for Georgia. And I think I saw that firsthand being on the field after games and stuff and seeing everyone embrace each other, things such as that. Guys who didn't play as much, guys who might have played a bunch. Everyone was just happy to be in that moment. And then the third one I have, this is kind of a gripe or a negative towards the Georgia fan base. It's probably never going to be enough for some people.
Ooh.
I mean, to win back-to-back national titles, you went 50-0 last year, and immediately have people, why is Mike Bubba doing this? Oh, I don't know if Carson Beck's the guy. We need to get Makai Muse out of there. You know, so much to the point that last week we had people saying, you know what? Kirby always gets out-coached by Nick Saban. He can't do it. He's just not as good a coach. I mean,
is the rest of the sport.
Yeah, but it's also like you beat him 2 years ago to win your first national title. It's like, maybe chill on the insults a little bit, or this doom and gloom. Where even in the Discord on like halfway through the SEC championship, where it was basically, well, it's over, we lost, there's nothing we can do. A lot of doom and gloom in the Georgia fan base, and I don't love that.
It's that time of year. Every notification you got to check. I'm unbearable this time of the year around my wife, like anything. It's just like the whole time. Hey, we have a whole another hour of content coming up. If you are here listening to us as a local viewer, right? If you are a Georgia fan or whatever, what's up?
News did just hit. Julian Humphrey just transferred, apparently.
So, yeah, let's get off this show. Let's talk about NBR. We got a whole other hour coming up. We'll see you.
Are we sure?